Thank you. As I said, these are three separate meetings. We're opening the meeting tonight, and the first zoning amendment we're going to discuss is ZC 2024-02, and it has to do with family cemeteries. So from that point, Ted, if you want to just give us a brief of what this amendment's about.
Sure. So family cemeteries are a cemetery for your immediate family, and they are permitted in the ORC. So we would like to put a little bit of just guidelines into the amendment for people who would wish to do such a thing. And really, it's pretty low lift for the township, as we've asked that they could potentially file an affidavit with the when they do the burial that puts a note on the title, so if there's a title transfer that a new buyer knows this has happened. But other than that, there's really no regulation other than that, and that we're proposing in the resolution. I think it's 200 feet from potable water and 20 feet from the lot line or something like that.
That would be for an ordinary cemetery, not a family cemetery.
Right, so none of that would apply to what we're talking about here. So essentially, if your grandmother died and wanted to be buried in the back 40, you could do that.
Are you saying that they should apply and let people know, or they have to
Should.
apply?
Should.
They don't have to?
Correct.
They can bury
Not
grandma
apply,
and
just file the, yeah. I mean, basically, from what I've gathered in all this is, once the funeral home or the coroner releases the body to you, they make a record of where it went, and then you can take it home and inter it on your land.
We don't reference that affidavit in this amendment, do we?
I think we might have pulled that out.
It's at the bottom of the schedule of uses in a
Oh,
footnote.
under that as a footnote,
Yeah,
okay.
that's.
This came from the planning commission.
I was just gonna say, a side note, there is a letter from the planning commission in Geauga County who has commented on this issue, and those will be available for people to see on our webpage, I believe.
Yeah, they recommended to not add family cemeteries as proposed to the various sections of the resolution, but rather the Board of Township Trustees pass a resolution stating they strongly encourage the recording of an affidavit of fact regarding the exact location of the family cemetery. That resolution can then be provided if anyone asks about establishing a family cemetery, be posted to the township's website. Anybody in the county done that yet?
No.
Nobody's buried somebody in there?
Well, no one's done the
Affidavit.
affidavit or the resolution, but the zoning commission felt that the resolution, it could get lost, it just, something is not, it's just not gonna
Right.
turn up. So if it's in the resolution, hopefully it will be seen, and the zoning department could advise the family accordingly if they wanna file that affidavit.
Why does it seem to me like this should be something at the recorder's office at the county?
The affidavit would be recorded, yes. And that's where, referring to turning up in a title search, it would turn up in a title search. But there are no other regulations to go with it, because the Ohio Attorney General wrote an opinion some time ago saying that the township must allow it.
Seems strange to me that unless you had an estate that you knew was staying in your family forever, that you would want to bury grandma next to a spot and move and sell the house one day, and then you couldn't even go on private property to see grandma at that spot anymore.
Point's well taken. Actually, we talked about it, like an easement of record, some notice that would delineate the affected area for future owners that was shot down by the prosecutor's office. We can't do
Really?
any of that.
So you just bury her in the rose bushes and just let it go at that?
So you don't have to disclose that when you're selling the property then?
No, that's where the affidavit would come in, Mike, if that's recorded.
If they didn't have the affidavit. Now, what if someone specifically were to ask you, by the way, are there any bodies on this property? It's kind of like if somebody's murdered in the house or something like that, you have to disclose it.
Which kind of goes to stand, is somebody going to put a headstone memorializing grandma that she's buried there, or just cover her up and rototill?
I just put a rock over my dog, so.
Yeah, the zoning commission talked about some kind of a marker on the site, delineate a fence, none of that can be done.
They just want to dig a hole. And are there any of these guidelines for like how deep you have to?
3 feet, no vault, no coffin necessary.
That's why I can't find my relatives.
I guess that's below the frost line. That
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
it's below what an animal would dig apparently, so.
Yeah.
I think we've been on the opposite end of this, Mike. You'll remember when former Auburn resident disinterred a bunch of his family members and moved them to a family cemetery in Manaway. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
15 years ago, you remember that?
yeah.
We had to go through court, we had to go through probate court to get him permission to do that. That's probably what,
Because somebody else had bought the property?
no, they were here, the family members
Oh,
were right here.
Oh, in the cemetery.
And then he established some kind of church and family cemetery and whatnot down in Manaway. He dug up his family members and moved them.
They were involved though, right? I mean, being here.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Hope they weren't
Just
so-
random.
Yeah, so that's pretty much where we
After
ended
the
up with
topsoil
that.
sifter getting granny together to shift around.
They do suggest that the body be 3 feet down so the animals can't dig their own.
3 feet down. And I'm assuming we're doing this because it's one of those things that if it's not in your book, then it's illegal. So that's why we're adding things that have never been addressed before, right?
And I think we've been asked about it
Yeah.
a couple times.
Well, that's pretty much it. We don't have it, there's a proposing resolution that's not permitted.
Correct.
So basically, by not having it in there, we're not permitting something that's illegal by the state, so
Right.
we have to put it in there.
Correct.
Yeah, that's pretty much the logic behind it.
Right. Anybody else on the board have comments on this amendment?
I think we're good.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this amendment? We got 10 minutes, come on, somebody, nobody?
I will. I'm still looking for one of my relatives who was buried over here on, about 44, just a little bit north. And just between one of two houses that are in the development back there. I still haven't been able to find them.
In Auburn,
Yeah.
on somebody's private property?
Yeah.
North of 44, this like the northwest corner.
North, this side of 44, just,
I'm aware that there was a family plot back in there. I think it was the Wood family. I think it was the Wood family plot.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, Benjamin
that's
Woods.
exactly right.
Norm Cross took me back there right after I got elected the first time. And there were still visible parts of headstones back then. We looked for it, I'm gonna say 5, 6 years ago, and we could not find anything there. You remember Norm Cross where he lived there?
I do.
Yeah, house is still there.
Yeah, that was what it is.
I could walk you within, 100 yards of it, but there was nothing identifiable when we did it last time, about 5 years ago.
Does Andy still live, there?
I don't know.
Okay. Any other public comments during this amendment? Anything? Nothing from the board?
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I'll call the roll.
Seconded by
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Mr. Tryon,
Yes.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Mr. McCary.
Yes. Okay, we are now going to open up the meeting for ZC 2024-04, which has to do with vineyards and accessory building heights. Just right off the top of my head, I believe one of the elements of this amendment is to change the height of outbuildings from 23 feet to 18 feet. Is that correct, Ted?
Yes.
And if you want to elaborate more on this amendment?
Sure, so this was at the request of various people, including the zoning department, because we're getting a lot of requests to build out accessory buildings with second stories that could potentially be used for non-permitted uses. So this would take the very tip of the ridge height down to 18, so down 5 feet, with the idea being that if somebody wanted to build a taller building with a good reason, that they could come and get a conditional use permit for it. And apparently we have pretty much the highest height in the county right now, is that correct, Mr. Dietrich?
There are a few eastern townships that go up to 35, but again, that's far eastern townships, more agricultural in nature, and again, that we can control agriculture. I don't mean to misunderstand, any of that misunderstanding, but they don't have the concerns that we do in this township, where there's these conversions that have been going on. And it's a bit of a dilemma, quite frankly, with the zoning department to try to regulate that. So, and if someone wanted to go higher, they could request an area variance, as it's called. Actually, it's a height variance, but these are called in the ORC and the case law area variances.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you got, geez, Far East, you know, if somebody's got a 100-acre farm or 500 acres or whatever, obviously you have to store a lot more
Right.
In there, whereas, you know, somebody who comes out here and says, yeah, I want a 55-foot barn on my 2-acre plot, you know, it's like, well, yeah, you're obviously not storing hay up there, so.
Right, and of course, if it is agriculture, you could build a 100-foot tall barn and store it on it.
That's right.
None of
Yeah,
that.
this
applies.
excludes agriculture, I believe.
Right, so this would just be, yeah, if you're building a garage or a second.
Yeah, so these are detached accessory
Attached.
buildings, not attached, not an attached garage. It's not, doesn't apply.
As in the last meeting, there's also a recommendation from the planning commission, which we'll make available to anybody that wants to see it. Do you want to comment, anybody want to comment what the planning commission said about it?
I'll just kind of sum it up, since I read this afternoon. They basically are, recommend approval with modifications. They got a checklist of 4 things. The first 3 are kind of like, maybe some redundant language, I suppose, is what you call it, which is pretty much what most zoning resolutions are. Number 4 is recommend the existing height of 23 feet remain. Just thoughts on that?
Well, I think there was a change from 18 to 23 some years ago, because there was a concern about, you know, these gables not meeting the 18, but again, the paramount concern here is there have been these illegal, if you will, conversions going on in the township subsequent to that. So it kind of encouraged these conversions of these upper levels to living space. So it's kind of unintended consequence behind raising that to 23. So the zoning commission wanted to go back to 18 to try to get a handle on this. And again, if someone wants to prove their case in front of the BZA for an area variance, they may. We added a provision as well, a prohibition on detached accessory building being used as a dwelling unit. That's an additional part of this amendment. So we tried to basically strengthen our position on it, if you will. The viticulture part, by the way, that's kind of just a sidebar. It's not as if we're suggesting regulation of wineries. We all know those are pretty much exempt from zoning. But the idea being that the person running it would provide to the zoning department that they have a valid license through the state. That's all. That's all that entails. So, just additional information for the file. They're running a legitimate winery.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, one more, just building heights were always kind of pertinent to the fire department, the ability to get over top of a building.
Yeah, that's another part of the
Address that.
equation maybe the chief would want to talk about.
That's
the
maybe
height,
the chief's
right?
got.
Well, having these buildings converted means there's somebody's in that building, we may not know about it. Typically, attached building or a dwelling, it would be a dwelling, so it would be we will know nobody's looking at it. That makes a big difference when we come to a fire, we gotta determine if there are people involved or not. So it does help out. A little less for us to fall off of it also when we're up there on top of the road.
Anyone else on the board? Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this amendment? Diane?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this zoning commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals has forgotten about the argument of 12 vines, which involve...
Of what rights? I'm sorry.
12 vines. And that wound up going to the Supreme Court. And it, you know, any building that is related, and anything that's related to the growing of grapes, that went to the Supreme Court, and it was a bitter battle. And it did involve, actually, Auburn Township and one of its farmer residents. And the second comment I have regarding reducing or lowering the height of an accessory building to 18 feet, who does zoning expect to be squatting in the building?
I don't think it's squatting. I think what they're talking about, we've had some instances here in the township where people have built these extra non-attached buildings and they've made them living quarters.
Quite a few, actually.
And that's, I think, what
How
spurred this
are
on.
you able to prove that?
Actually, that's another problem.
Well, they actually called the zoning department to come and look at it and said it was agriculture and there was a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom in it, and that's not agriculture.
As soon as they have another place to live on that same property, we're already, in our zoning, we cannot have two dwellings on the same property.
Well, there
Yeah,
you go.
and that-
There you go.
Well, I guess
But
his point- I think
but
his
we're
point-
seeing it happen.
You know, because that was part of Ms. Crombie's comment, that once you provide a definition of only one residence per property, it gets to be, it's redundant, just in terms of, you know, modified language and the request from the County Planning Commission to approve, but with language modification. And, you know, the County Planning Commission, I guess, saw the problem with the duplicate language. That's all. I mean, 12 years ago, from a farming standpoint, you know, there were some strange arguments about buildings and what kind of livestock building could possibly be used for something other than livestock. And, of course, we were involved in that kind of argument too, and we pursued it to the end. And, you know, 11th District Court of Appeals did see us through, but there was this, regardless of okay, I'm not, what we did was purely agricultural, and we were a farm. And we were not to be zoned as a farm in a township, but we were. And to prove that we were right, we had to fight it. If we'd have said, we're right, that would not have made any difference at all. So you cause someone who is right to have to pay the costs of going all the way down, paying a lawyer, going through the litigation, and you, Mr. Director, you will recall that as well. So that is something that we do not forget at a time when clearly anybody who came out to look at our property and the building, anybody who saw it even from the street knew that we were agriculture. We still are. That's what we do. So it's still a little objectionable to hear these, what sound like little plays on language and little problems with, you know, just being extra, I don't know what to call it, but it brings up old memories, and they're not pleasant. So, my comment.
Yes, sir.
I don't have
State your name first.
My name is Morris Ween.
Morris what?
Ween, W-E-I-N.
W-E-I-N.
So I don't have a huge stake in this issue personally, but just listening, like, to both sides, I've been hearing what the fire chief had to say about the safety issues, like, makes it logical to me, but then hearing what she just said, like, she articulated, I was thinking a lot of those similar points as they were describing it before he had mentioned something, and I was thinking similarly to you guys. I think she articulated it better than I can and had the history behind it, but just to play devil's advocate, I see the safety issue, but if there is already a rule that you can only have one residency on a house, then the way I see it, those people that did that are in violation, and you guys can already just tell them no. So I don't know, other than the safety issue, how important it is to change this. Yeah, so it almost seems like if it ain't broke, don't fix it situation to me, but, I mean, if it really, really feels broken, but. I don't know, I don't mean to, like, I'm not trying to really sway the argument one way or the other, I just figured I'd participate,
So,
so.
other comments? Anyone else from the public wants to address this issue?
I got one other thing to add.
Go ahead, chief.
Nothing against agriculture, I love agriculture, I love our farms, but the other thing is we have a lot of buildings that are being built underneath the agricultural exemption that aren't being inspected, that have no designing and roof process or anything like that, so they don't take into consideration some of the snow loads that come into play, and that's created some problems for us too. With people living up in there, that is not a building that's been inspected. There's been a few cases of that.
I get it. I mean, I have a barn on my property. It is strictly agriculture. It's nothing in that building that isn't beekeeping related. But if somebody else bought that house one day and looked at the upstairs of that barn, they could turn it into a living quarters without anybody knowing it. And I think that's also a reason for why we're doing this amendment.
Yeah, I just want to recap, since agriculture's only really a small part of this amendment. As Ted and David both said earlier on, if it's an agricultural barn, that 18-foot height requirement does not apply because it's an agricultural barn. The other part with the agriculture connection is viticulture, winery. I'll paraphrase a little bit here, but if the buildings are primarily for venting and selling wine, then the applicant shall include with the zoning certificate and agricultural exemption forms, which we do here. You come in, if you're doing an ag barn, it's fine. We just want to know the barn's there and you're exempt, and there's kind of a statement that says such. Connected to that should be the issuance of a permit pursuant to ORC 4303.031, which is, I assume, is a liquor license or something.
That's the license for the
Yeah.
wine.
So, I mean, it goes directly to that's exempt as well.
Okay, now, if somebody's building an accessory building, and they're not claiming agriculture, it's just, we're putting a building out back to put my lawnmower in and store some stuff. Now, is that gonna have the same guidelines when it's being inspected by the county as a living residence?
You're talking about building code now, Mike? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the building department is doing in this regard, quite frankly. I presume they're looking at it in terms of the, what is required by their code.
Like
But-
required by the code for an accessory building.
Right.
So now
they might not
somebody who's
disclose.
out there and they're putting in a bathroom, bedroom, heat, air conditioning, basement, and everything else in this thing, and they're just gonna look at the outside, yep, that's a shed,
Yeah.
and again, the chief has no way of telling that anybody's living there. And it's not necessarily somebody living there or renting it out as a secondary thing. You've got the grandkids over, so you're basically using these things as party centers, got some extra sleeping arrangements upstairs. Again, so you got all your grandkids up there after the party, sleeping upstairs in this thing, there's a fire, the chief doesn't know anybody's in there. So, you know, it's a safety issue, it's not really looking at the whole aspect that, people are renting there or living there full-time. It's just, are there gonna be people there sometimes, and, there would have to be some way to notify the fire, but yes, there's people up here.
It just sounds, from our own personal experience, okay, and we've been here since 1995, and we immediately, as soon as we could get the agricultural exemption, I mean, we did, and we had more than enough land, and right from the beginning, we knew that we were going to be grazing horses and ponies, okay? And everybody else who knew us knew that that was the case. Well, there might be a few exceptions, but basically, we were visible, and that's what we did. That was what we wanted to do, and we weren't the only ones. Okay, and it just seems it was so difficult. We are personally aware of people who left this community because they were farmers too. And they moved out because they were disencouraged, or they were discouraged. Hopefully, this is a different attitude right now, but back then, if folks were just a little bit different, and we weren't particularly different. We were city kids, and we were well established, and we had good reputations, and we were honest, but we still had to pay for every step of the way. And not everybody could do that, and that was a drain, and it should not have happened to people who were clearly agricultural. I mean, there was no question about it.
Okay,
You know,
we've got it.
I got it.
All
I
right, we
nailed
want to
it.
do this
That's it.
amendment, and I appreciate your thoughts. Anybody else? Anything? Anybody else from the board?
Good.
I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
Yeah, I'll second.
Mr. Tryon,
Yes.
Mr. Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Mr. McCary.
Yes. All right, the next amendment, we put as a public announcement, it would start at 7:30. That's 3 minutes away, and I'm assuming most of the people here today are for this next amendment. So I'm gonna give it 3 minutes, and we will open this next one, just in case people out who haven't gotten here yet that want to attend this one, they still have 3 minutes before this meeting starts.
How was everybody's New Year?
You're long 3 minutes.
Didn't expect a lull like this. Nobody's got to go to the bathroom, the refreshment bars.
Well, we're doing this kind of out of chronological order.
Right, I don't know why that was put that way, but it is.
Because we thought maybe there'd be more than 15 minutes.
Right,
of
and this is
comments. That's
definitely a
fine.
bigger
That's
amendment
fine.
than the other two. Unless any of you are planning on burying your grandmother the next week or two in the backyard.
Is it a matter of just having it in writing, just like the family cemetery?
Yeah.
This other one was just to have it in writing, so what the code is.
I'm just glad my wife doesn't follow anything I do here, because if you don't hear from me, I'm under the blueberry bushes next to the cat.
Your cat died?
A long time ago, and she buried him under the blueberries while I was out of town.
Yeah, she might have to go deeper than 3 feet, you might still be able to dig yourself out.
Freeze.
I know she could have, that would have been the nice thing to
Well,
do.
it's probably good fertilizer.
Yeah, sure.
Get an auger and put your.
Okay, it's 7:30. This meeting that we are calling is for ZC 2024-03 mobile food units. Now, before we get into this, I just have a couple comments. So I've heard all kind of stories that Auburn has banned food trucks, you can't have a food truck, and it's...
We hate food trucks.
We hate food trucks. It's my understanding that in your zoning, in your township, if you don't list something in your zoning, it's illegal. And that's why the zoning took this up, to make it not illegal. If we had a zoning inspector who played by the books, there are businesses who have used food trucks who would not have been allowed to do that because it's not in the zoning. What the zoning department took up is to do this so they will be legal, they will follow health rules, safety issues, and I can tell you, someone who does festivals, craft shows, and fairs from March to December, I have watched safety people, fire departments health inspectors get on these food trucks, make sure they have the proper licensing, make sure they're registered, make sure their truck conforms to everything that's safety and wellness for everybody involved. So that's what I believe this amendment is for. Am I correct in saying that,
Yes.
gentlemen?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we'll say it again, ZC 2024-03, mobile food units. Ted, if you want to start what we did and why we did it.
Sure. To your point, Gene, it was brought up, in the community that we had this happening. And there were some business owners who were pro and some business owners who were on the fence. And I want to say also, when I say business owners, I think I was thinking about it earlier, maybe 5 or 6 business owners from this community have been in this room over the last year talking about this. And I think we all agree there's well more than 5 businesses in this community. So to say that this was a broad statement by the community one way or another, I think is disingenuous, because it's pretty small minority of folks that were looking to make this happen one way or another. Not that that means it shouldn't. So, we have a developing entertainment area with some venues going in that wanted to have this sort of thing, and we wanted to put some framework around it. And to your point, Gene, I'm also in a business where I see a lot of food trucks. I've seen stickers and inspections, and I've also seen a lot of dodgy stuff happening as far as health and safety goes, propane tanks and people not washing their hands and all kinds of things that I'd rather not get into right now. But, we want this to happen in the community because it feels like there's a lot of people who do and there's a lot of businesses that do. But to your point, we want to put some framework around it. And, I was called out in the paper about a comment I made at a meeting where, I travel around the country and I see a lot of things that just look kind of junky. And that's probably in communities where they haven't put something like this in. So what we're really trying to avoid is having one truck or mobile food unit that stays in a solitary place, and maybe it's only open one day a week, but the other 6 days a week it's sitting there, getting dirty or, clogging up the landscape. And also, for the transient nature, this is a transient business. It's not a permanent thing. These trucks, by their business nature, should be coming and going, and whether or not they're Barrio or the lobster truck or whichever one it goes, they're designed to move around, and that's what we want to see happening. Is we'd love to see more and more venues for them, but within a certain framework that they're operating.
Anyone from the board has comments or issues?
I think, the key thing we're looking at is, nobody has any problem with food trucks. We have our party in the park, and we have food trucks every year, and we have since the beginning of course, we're exempt from zoning, so we can't get in trouble with ourselves. But, we're out, not against them. I've been to events up at the corner, and, I've had food from the food trucks there, so, it's not something we're hating, but we have to have some kind of guidelines. Now, I know from your vantage point, say, one statement that food trucks are allowed, leave it at that. Well, that leaves everybody with a pickup truck and a dozen stale hot dogs to park there and start selling it. So, again, we're just looking at the health and safety aspects of food trucks, making sure that, that they're in compliance with all the safety and health codes.
Anyone else from the board? PJ, do you want to read anything from the planning commission?
Well, the planning commission did have some interesting comments here. December 10th at their meeting, they voted to recommend denial. Factors are some language where the word may is used instead of shall. I started this one comment, which I had thoughts about this earlier. Moreover, while the planning commission recommends denial, they also recommended instead that the township pursue Ohio Revised Code Section 505.94, registration and regulation of transient vendors. And we have that in our resolution. We set a fee for that every year when we do our zoning fees.
Sure.
This goes over and above that registration. I don't understand why they're denying us being, and it's not a whole lot more specific. It's basically, you can't put signs all over the place, you can't park in the right of way, things like that.
Yeah, that's,
sensible things.
yeah, that's the thing, PJ, not to interrupt you.
Why can't we do both, I guess is what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
but The thing about the transient vendor, that just relates to sales.
Somebody door to door.
And
Yeah,
We're
it's
talking,
like
we're
the
talking,
previous.
and what we're talking here is what you just briefly mentioned, setbacks, how many, how often, making sure we have the approval of the fire department, health department, so forth and so on. So those items are not in your resolution
They're not.
for transient vendor.
May I make a comment?
Wait till I get to public.
We're gonna leave a lot of time, we'll leave the time.
So I just don't think the zoning commission felt the same, it just doesn't cover the bases. Leaving it totally in the realm of the transient vendor.
Yeah, two things to keep in mind here is number one, 10, 15 years ago, mobile food trucks or mobile food, whatever they're called here, food trucks, weren't a thing, really, they were just getting started. Zoning's been in place here since the 50s, and no one ever considered such a thing back in the 50s, but.
I don't think there were food trucks in the 50s.
Well, probably wasn't.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. But that would be your transient vendor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we did address it, we have all along. You know, the other thing is, as Mike mentioned earlier, yeah, we rent Adam Hall out, and there's been multiple occasions where that's who they choose to serve food is food trucks. We specifically hired them ourselves over here.
Absolutely.
So, you know, this is just as things change, you gotta adapt to them.
And PJ, that's why we included the special event permit language in there, so any given business can pull 2 special event permits per quarter to extend the days that they can have the trucks and to add another truck to have a total.
I'd say we're making this fit, these regulations fit with how they're being used right now then.
We tried.
Yeah.
Additionally, if someone is having a birthday party, a
Graduation.
wedding reception, or whatever at their house, fine. We're not covering that in terms of regulations. So,
And I want to reiterate one more time, the reason the zoning worked on this is because since it was not in the book, it was illegal. Now it will be legal. And with that, I'll open up questions for the audience. Anyone that would like to, you first, sir, go ahead.
I just want clarification, myself, maybe for others too, but are not the mobile, food trucks, covered by, the health department already? Is that the Geauga County, or if they come from Cuyahoga County, they're inspected by inspectors in their relative counties?
We typically work together on that, if I may answer that.
Go ahead.
Cuyahoga County, if they get inspected in there, will accept their inspection.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
vice
I-
versa, them, us being out there.
Right,
So we usually work together, but this shores up our health and safety
right.
measures a little bit
Oh,
better.
good. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure, because
Yeah,
I assumed that it was that way, I hope so. You don't need people getting sick, and if they did, then they'd probably be out of business, but, and personally, I like the variety that comes through town, because, we'll, go up and eat Cernas, but then I don't want to have to eat Italian the next week maybe, so, it's nice to see the rotation of different offerings and other people's businesses.
I'm gonna say the actual cooking and the food service part of it, yeah, that's covered by the health department. What this amendment's gonna address is such things as temporary signs that they're gonna put up for advertising that the truck's there. Tables and chairs shall be prohibited. Closed lids required on any trash receptacles not located within the right-of-way. These are things that zoning
Makes
can
sense,
address,
yeah.
not the health issues, that's the
Mhm.
health department to address.
If you saw
That
the
seems
hoops
common
that the food
sense.
people have to jump through at the Geauga County Fair, you'd be amazed.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
for your health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Young man, you
Okay,
have.
so I just, I want to try to be concise. It's obviously been a very personal issue for us. It started for us, how we got involved in this.
First of all,
My
who's
name
us?
is Morris Ween.
Wayne.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
And
Something.
at
Fox,
permit
okay.
office.
This is
So,
your, This is your
This
father?
is my father, and this
Okay.
is my mother. So,
Okay.
Jason and Debbie. So it started as a really personal issue for us because, you know, we had bought a permanent food truck, or a food truck that we had planned to install permanently, and now we've since sold that food truck and we're taking a different direction. Come March, we're gonna be serving hot dogs and soft pretzels and popcorn within our facilities, and that's gonna go through the health department. So, and you know, I don't wanna get this personal, so this part will be brief, but the zoning department said, you know, they made it clear that they did not wanna pick winners and losers, and I don't think that they have been intentionally, but I think through this process, they sort of have in a way with it, when we're, like with us buying this and now selling it, but I don't even care, because we're already going a different direction. What I wanna argue for next is really not even for us, because once we start serving our own food, I don't plan to have food trucks very often, except for our larger events. I hope not, okay, so anyway, just let me talk this, please. And then, sorry, so, I love everything that the zoning board has drafted in the legislation, and especially in terms of the safety, and like, I had made a mistake as like learning this process, doing this business, where I had allowed in my first year, food trucks to park, you know, on our parking lot, like in a handicap space, not realizing how dangerous and foolish that was, so I apologize, and this is why these sort of regulations are great. The one area where I have major hangups on regulations, and, you know, you had mentioned that you're regulating it based on pretty much how food trucks are used now with like the 2 days a week thing, which for us, I mean, generally, I haven't had a food truck more than twice a week, I don't think ever. But I know a lot of businesses that have, and I would still like the opportunity to, if I wanted to, have a food truck more than twice a week. I think everything on this bill is perfect, but I think that is the only thing is you should not limit the amount of days, or if you do, it should be at least, in my opinion, 5, or at the very least 4, but if you don't even go that direction, it's just, I'm not making this I really am not making this argument just like for ourselves and our business, like it might seem that way, but I swear, like I am friends with these other businesses, and I know how much they rely on food trucks, and I don't want to see a limit put on how many times you're allowed to have a food truck. Because I want to see these other businesses succeed, that's important to me. I don't want just Hoss to be huge, I don't want a bunch of random people moving in, but I want, like, when I tell people that I'm from Auburn, Ohio, even if, no matter where I am in the United States, they know where we are, because we're just so freaking cool. And, and I think that this legislation limiting the time would really, like, hurt that for us. And then, I want to apologize, I didn't know you were called out directly, I didn't even know you were called out directly in the article and stuff, and that it has turned into this thing of like people saying you guys hate food trucks, but you know, when you say that it's unfair for us to say that this really is something that the majority of the community wants, I don't think that's a bold statement. In fact, I'm so confident that I'm correct in that statement that I suggested to the zoning board in one of the first meetings that we have this in a township election. I think you guys would be shocked by the results, and how I feel this, obviously I don't speak to everybody in this community on a weekend, and I have a lot of people coming from different areas, not just Auburn, to my bar, but I speak to at least 300 and see at least like 300 different faces a weekend. And especially for people that live in this township, from what I've heard, it is almost unanimous that they want food trucks and that they don't think there should be a time-restricted regulation. But I really do respect and believe everything else is perfect. And now I'm done. And with that, I think he wants me to leave. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sherry Bailey.
Sherry Bailey.
I really do agree with everything. My only concern and question was really about the limited number of days of the week. I understand not wanting to have a permanent food truck, I completely agree. But, you know, as a resident, I look and say, who's got what food truck? And we go to places sometimes based on the food that they're gonna have. I don't understand the limit to 2 days a week, because essentially if you look at a weekend, you know, depending on what days or sports or football, as long as it's not permanent, as long as it's not the same thing, which would indicate something being more of a resident or permanent structure, I don't understand the limiting at all, because that brings in business to those businesses. It brings in people. I mean, honestly, we look, oh, what food trucks where? And, oh, well, we're gonna go here tonight because this is where we wanna go eat this. I think that doing restrictions are important, and I'm not arguing that at all. I just think that limit of the number of 2 a week does potential harm to your businesses in your community. And that's the only point I wanted to make.
If I'm not mistaken, even Cleveland has limits on how many times you can have a food truck. They have a Food Truck Wednesday down on One Walnut Avenue every Wednesday.
There's a lot of other things Cleveland does that we don't do because we're Auburn Township and we're
Well,
a
and they're
smaller
small
township.
businesses, right? These are not big businesses.
So-
These are not food truck parks. Beechwood has one now. I mean, we're talking about small businesses, and it's a way to bring in a variety of people who follow food trucks, because there's that too. You know, they know the food trucks they like and they want to come into it, but, you know, these are small businesses that we're talking about. These aren't, you know, other different larger entities, and I just think that that would be, have a negative impact. So, that's all I wanted to say.
I don't want to speak for the zoning commission, because Ted Van Heining's here tonight, and he can if he wants to, but I believe this amendment was written with somewhat in mind of how food trucks are being used right now, or how they've been used here over the, you know, recent history.
That's correct. And that's, again, with the special event permit, you could have, so let's say a
But even
quarter.
that is limited to 2 quarters.
Yeah,
only.
but
Let's
twice
let 'em-
per
let's-
quarter.
let's let 'em say
So
why.
there was some feedback from the business community that they, you know, the peak season being, let's say, April through October. So in that time period, that's 4 special event permits. It gets you basically 4 extra days, 2 extra trucks over those days. You know, I'm of the opinion that that may not have gone far enough, but on the commission, we voted on it. Some people wanted it to be more stringent than that. One of the things that we've talked about throughout the process was some hard data, and, you know, you mentioned votes or referendums or surveys. You know, we didn't see any of that, but let's
Is it on us to?
let's open this, you know, like Gene mentioned earlier, you know, the zoning inspector could have been out writing citations for this for the last, you know, 18 months or however long it's been going on. As a commission, we really wanted to put it in there, and let's see what happens. If it's not working in a year, I'll be here, we'll all be here, we can talk about this, sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Your name?
My name is Gina Ionero.
Gino Iannini.
I'm sorry. So I'm gonna start again. So I also have some problems with the amount of days. When we talk about the data and the surveys, I did bring a survey to the meeting. I surveyed, it was over 100 Auburn residents. I had that hard data. I was basically told that that's not what they were looking for, and that we needed to have more. My friend who lives in Ascot also said, we can get you the data. That was not accepted. That was not acceptable. Nobody wanted the data. Hawks has the data, 8th Day has the data. I could have easily gotten that data. But there were some people on the board, and Ted, this wasn't necessarily you, that didn't want to hear that data that I was able to give. That was pretty much, I was just shut down on that. So I have some strong feelings about the way that some of the meetings went. Particularly Scott was very hostile at some of the meetings, and that was very hard to deal with from in my point of view, because I don't like them arguing. And actually, it wasn't even arguing, it was Scott just coming at certain people at the meeting. I think there are some very strong opinions about the food trucks, whether it be from the bars in the area, wanting to have these food trucks, and it being kind of a divided by the board. It's not fair to brick and mortar. The brick and mortar that we're talking about happens to be Cerna's, and all of the bars have Cerna's there and everything else. There was some back and forth, but water under the bridge on that, let's just move on. But we have to be fair to all of the businesses, whether it's a restaurant or a bar, they also paid money to be in this community and build their bar. So I do have a problem as well with the amount of days. If it could be a couple, and I know that there's special events, but I don't think you should be necessarily ruled if you want to have it 3 days or whatever. It's hard to say too, because maybe you're gonna have Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
For more than two times and I know that went back and forth, and I've been to almost all of the zoning meetings involving this, maybe not all, but darn lots of them. That's my only problem with it as well, so.
Anyone else? Sir, you just walked in, you have a...
I've been listening, I agree with pretty much what everybody's been saying. I'm sorry. My name is Ed Slowinski, I'm a resident, not too far from
areas in concern. So I'm a big fan of having the additional resources of alternate food sources. My wife and I are big foodies. We love to do the same thing these people and everybody here in the community does. Has to look to see what's available, make a decision to go there and have some supper, Auburn Township, something local, keep it local, keep Auburn strong. I agree with the 2 days seems kind of tight. It's a 3-day weekend, far as I remember. I'm getting old, but it's always 3 days to me, so that seems like a more logical, easy choice to make everybody happy.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
To start off with, I'm neither for nor against the food trucks. I'm more concerned about the process. You started with the statement that if it wasn't included, it's not allowed.
Right.
Number one, I know from personal experience that will not stand up in court. Number two, the Supreme Court just recently ruled on something called the Chevron doctrine, which actually is derived from the Chevron doctrine. So I think that part of our zoning really needs to be looked at, because I'm not sure that anybody knowing about the Chevron doctrine and knowing about the fact that you get to the appellate court level, it'll be thrown out. I think we ought to look at that part of our zoning and see if that needs to be tightened up using different language.
The reason you said it wouldn't stand up in court is the reason the zoning department worked on it. So it would be stand up in court.
But if you're using that phraseology, it won't stand up.
What won't stand up?
If it's not included in the zoning, it is.
He's saying that portion of our code is
That portion of
invalid.
your code,
Yeah.
the way it's written, it won't stand up.
Okay. Dave, you got a comment on that one?
I don't know of anything in our appellate court district that would indicate that the statement we have now in our zoning resolution, which actually is in every township zoning resolution in this county, I don't have anything that I'm aware of that speaks to this as being unenforceable or illegal. So
That might be a good mental note that the commission may want to have somebody look into that. Just to.
Sure, I mean, it's been brought up about the constitutional piece, and I mean, that's way above our pay grade is, you know, and again, you know, like, we're talking about laws and illegal, we're talking about a resolution here.
Yeah,
We're not
let's get
making-
back to this.
Yeah, we're not making civil laws here because we're not a town or a city or a village in the state.
Yeah, I want to go to the numbers that you were talking about because they're specific in here. It's 2 zoning certificates may be issued for a special event. 2 special events are allowed per quarter. Quarters are broken up January, March, April, June, et cetera, et cetera. Maximum number of days for a special event shall be 3 days, so there's your long weekend. Upon expiration, the mobile food unit and any trash receptacles or other related items shall be immediately removed from the lot. So it does allow for long weekends.
And if it's a real party weekend, it can be 5 days because you could start on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and still have Friday and Saturday.
I also want to make clear that this board has, what we're going to do is we're going to hold this public hearing. I'm going to have a suggestion here shortly, how to move on with it. But we can approve this with 2 votes. It's a majority vote now, correct, Dave?
Yes.
majority.
Used to be 1, now it's 2.
We can adopt or
we can
deny
it, or we
or
can
we can make
modify it.
it.
We can modify it.
And that will not be done tonight.
That will not be done tonight.
We have actually up to 20 days to do it.
After we close the public
After we close the
hearing.
public hearing, which we're going to do shortly.
I'm not gonna, actually, I don't wanna get ahead of myself, but I would like to continue this, because we've got 3 on the docket here. Let's get these 2 out of the way that seem to be slightly less controversial. And I'd like to continue this, but we'll get to that in a second. The other thing is, any amendment that passes through this board that's put into the resolution is subject to referendum. So it's an intimidating process, but it's not really difficult. You gotta get your paperwork in order and gather signatures based on the last gubernatorial election, how many people voted. I think it's 8% still?
That was changed to 15.
Changed to 15, used to be 8%, so. But it's not impossible. Referendums are part of the zoning process.
Well,
How
any other comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
how many days a week typically would you have a food truck at the Hoffs?
Like twice a week, and sometimes we don't, like we don't get one. Like last weekend we had one.
So actually, the 2 times a week is
Yeah.
with the special events.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have, I know you have like the art festivals up there.
Yes, we have the art festivals and then we have like.
And those are
Friday,
typically
Saturday,
how long?
Sunday. That's like 3 days usually.
Okay, so realistically, you could have a truck up there for 3 days for those events.
Yes.
But in that quarter, you'd have the Fourth of July,
Yeah, and then there's.
you'd have the art festival, and you'd have one more.
Yeah, it's good.
So that would be
it's good-
3.
It's good convert.
So, yeah.
Well, like I said, I'll go with PJ on this one. I think we should do a continuation on this last amendment. Only because, like I said, right now we're gathering the information, because like I said, we're the ones that are gonna have to make this decision. Okay? And right now, you guys pick 2 days out. 3 days would probably be better for you guys. You seem like that would be a middle ground. Okay, so that's not an overwhelming thing. So it's just something kind of would like to absorb before I have to make a final commitment saying, yes, absolutely 2 days, because you guys ran all the math and calculations, and 2 days, 3 days. See, I know both of you are picking arbitrary figures, because you said 2 days, you said 3 days. And maybe it's actually 2.5 days, but you're just rounding up or rounding down, so I don't know who's right and who's wrong. So
Explain to me the importance of keeping it open when we have the right to close this meeting and not vote on it or make suggestions within 20 days. What would be the difference? What is it that you want to keep the meeting open for? When we can already do those things, when we make either deny or approve or do it with suggestions, what would be the difference?
Just to see if there's any additional public comment or any additional information that might be brought into a meeting. I mean, we can do it either way.
What was the information you were talking about?
I had done a survey.
Well, if there's no other public information or input, I'm going to vote to close this meeting.
Gene, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
You all folks, all of you mentioned that you have talked to residents. We want the trucks, we want the trucks. What about the food vendors? Do they want to be here? I mean, I know they keep coming back and they like the money, but are the food trucks asking for, in order to come to Hoff's for, your weekend event, our limit is or requirement is a 3-day commitment. Well, you can't go with that food vendor because you can't do a 3-day commitment unless it's a special event and what have you. If the food vendors are requiring a minimum of 3 days, then maybe it's 3. If the food vendors are willing to work with you, has anybody talked to the food vendors on what they want?
I don't think this is an issue for the food vendors
I mean,
myself.
if all of us are saying, hey, we want to bring Burger King to Auburn, and Burger King's gonna say, I don't want to go to Auburn.
Well, they do want to go to Auburn, they want to go to the truck stop.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Anybody else?
Can I go again?
Sure.
Jeff Bailey, never said that before. I know we sell hops to various breweries, including everybody up and down Washington Street. But talking to other brewers, and this is just for them really, I know that it's hard for them to put in afford kitchens. Most of the people we know, we deal with small businesses, family-run businesses.
And they put tons of their money and time into their efforts, into their business. And at least what I've seen, I think Sherry would say the same, is they never had the idea that they had to have a kitchen to get started.
If you sell alcohol in this state, you have to sell food.
Oh, I know, but that's like packaged food. I mean, I'm talking about a kitchen where they've got a kitchen staff, and the breweries that do really well have a full kitchen. And I think it's kind of in hindsight, I think the food trucks keep people there longer. They come to Auburn, they spend their money here. I'm assuming, they collect taxes and stuff on it. But I don't think I've ever seen the same food truck at the same place twice, and I don't know if I've ever been anywhere where they've had more than one food truck at a time. I mean, it's not like we're opening up a little park with 2 or 3 food trucks typically every weekend.
Go to Keston football game on a Friday night, they got 4 or 5 food trucks.
Well, okay, so that's okay for the school, but not for another business.
That's okay for our too, we have 3 or 4 of them up at our,
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, so,
And again,
we're not looking to populate the world with food trucks, but, it's just,
There's a way to.
there's choice. There's
Do
gotta
we
be a way
limit the
around it
number of
that's
food
done
trucks that
right.
could be in an event?
2, I think it's 2.
We're limiting it to 2?
Yeah, and maybe that's something that could take another look at, I'm not sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying, my 2.5 day thought, is it actually 2 trucks or was it 2 3/4 trucks you rounded
Well,
it? Again,
there's been a lot of
my
conversation.
point is on a lot of this stuff, if you're looking at putting in a guideline, you have to pick a number.
Right, and the whole time that we've been talking about this, which is going on a year now, there's been a lot of comment about picking winners and losers and this and that, and to your point, sir, what you just described is exactly what we're trying to permit, which is a couple of days a week that you raise that business up. We're also following the lead of Bainbridge, which was just brought up, because they're the first township in the county to adopt this sort of thing, and that's what we based our language on, and it has presumably been working for them, or, and like I mentioned earlier, this whole resolution's a living document, and we're more than willing to change it as things develop. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm going out of business, if this doesn't change and I've got, here's the hard data or whatever, we'll take a look at it, but we can't make a decision like that based on any one business or category of business. And like I mentioned earlier, 5 or 6 businesses have made very vocal stances on this, and there's 20 or 30 other businesses that this may apply to who aren't in this room, and that's not to say they don't have a voice, but, we can't go towards only the vocal folks who want to show up at this meeting. We are trying to balance this out, but not from a business standpoint, from what's best for the township and the community. That's what we're looking at here, not picking any, brick and mortar over transient. That's not what we're here for.
Yeah, that train of thought goes into, more than zoning. I mean, anything we're doing here, whatever it is. Okay, first thing I do is, pull all the other townships, see what they're doing. Because, yeah, you can start from scratch and then make something up, but, you've got 16 other townships that have already, done this before. So, and, if 15 of them are doing it one way, and, it's a starting point, so you say, this is what we're gonna do based on this. Now, anything we do, is gonna be, again, we have to look to, you use that as your baseline, and then, now, what are the specific needs of our particular township? And then expand it accordingly, or make the adjustments and tweaks there, so I mean, what you did is absolutely proper. I was on the zoning commission, it was over 20 years ago now, but same thing we did, and we look at, why start from scratch if you had, look at what the other people have done, and that's your base starting point.
It is a tough topic, Mike, because it really is so young. And we only have, let's see what Ted said, we have 1 township in the county that's done it. The municipalities, Shard and Middlefield Village, have regulations, but they do licensing. So you can see now, this is a dilemma, and I'm not gonna delve deeply into this, but you guys know where I'm headed. Townships can only do things that are authorized in the ORC, whereas municipalities have home rule authority. So they have more flexibility on these matters. So they do a license that's usually granted by the mayor, And the mayor can sit down, depending on the case, it's more of a case-by-case scenario, you see. But we don't have that luxury in a
Yeah,
township.
we have to make a one-size-fits-all guideline that we can fit into the
That's
resolution.
it, because we have to have uniformity, that word is used in the ORC. Must have uniform regulations within the zoning district. So we can't do different things for different businesses within the same zone. Again, these are some of the problems we have with township zoning through the ORC, so we grapple with it. But the zoning commission, they heard a lot of testimony over the past year on this whole topic, and it's difficult. And again, a lot of it's because it's such a new topic.
And again, we look at, if you're looking at restaurants, versus a food truck, they're not necessarily competing, because a lot of the restaurants that are around here have a food truck also, and they do outside catering, so they're akin businesses. And so, again, looking at, look at the hops, the other breweries, so, yeah, I would like to get some information and say, okay, like I said, ask them there, and they said, 2 days, okay, might be good. But, for example, if you say, okay, 2 days is good, and if we look at the other operations that are going on in the township here, and they're saying, yeah, two is fine. But like I said, if they all came back and said, we're having events 3 days a week, every week, we run Friday through thing, then we're affecting the business's operation over an arbitrary number. So, like I said, I'm not steadfast on the 2 or the 3, but, we're doing this, for the residents, and, we're not doing this to hurt businesses, we're trying to help the businesses, but, we want them to thrive. They're part of the community also, so.
I think the zoning commission also, and I'm talking, they were looking to the future as well. We know what we've got now, but we also always have to think about what could happen. So that's part of the rationale for having limits.
Okay. Based on the information that I've heard tonight, based on months of testimony and listening to the people today, I personally see no reason to keep this meeting open. We have 29 days to either accept it, deny it, or add things to it. We have 20 days to do that. We can close this meeting, and if the board wants to find more information within 20 days of 2 days or 3 days, we can still do that at our meeting and make those recommendations. So with that said, I'm going to make the motion to close this meeting. Wait for a second.
I'll second.
Call for the vote, Jane.
Mr. Tryon?
I want some discussion in here first. We close this meeting now. Outside of scheduling a special meeting, we have to vote on it at the next meeting. So,
You got 1 whole week to find out if you want to go 2 days or 3 days.
okay, that's all.
Went out. Call for the vote, David.
Mr. Tryon?
Yes.
Mr. Kavanaugh?
No.
Mr. McCune?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you for your input. Thank you for coming out on a cold Monday night to express your opinions.